She left a napkin note for the Mafia boss next day. 11 men in suits called her Miss. The graveyard shift at the Orchid Diner always ended the same way, with the smell of stale coffee grounds and the acidic tang of industrial cleaner. It was 3 a.m. in Port Aurelia, outside. The Kestrel Bridge was a skeleton of wet steel, and the rain came down in a miserable, steady drizzle that blurred the neon sign. My name is Mara Devon. My apron pocket held exactly $4 and change. My bank account was empty from a student loan payment I'd finally cleared, and my landlord's eviction notice was taped to the inside of my apartment door. I was tired down to the marrow of my bones. I was wiping down the chrome counter, my reflection looking back at me like a ghost in Scrubs, when the bell above the door chimed. It wasn't the usual late-night crowd. This was different. 6 men in suits that cost more than my next 6 months' rent. They moved not like customers, but like water filling a container, silent and absolute. They took the back booth, the vinyl sighing under their weight. 5 of them were built like refrigerators. The 6th, the one who sat in the middle, was not. He was maybe in his mid-30s, with dark hair and a stillness that sucked the air out of the diner. He didn't look around, he just looked forward, as if the world arranged itself for his inspection. I knew the rumors. Everyone in Port Aurelia knew the Romano Consortium, and everyone knew the name whispered about its leader, Fabio Romano. He was a myth made of bespoke wool and quiet danger. I grabbed my notepad, coffee. One of the refrigerators, a man with a jaw so tight it looked painful, started to speak. He'll have... Romano raised one hand, barely an inch, and the man stopped. Just coffee, black, Romano said. His voice was quiet, a low vibration that seemed to settle on the skin. And whatever you recommend for my men. The pie is decent, I said, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. Apple. 6 slices of apple pie. He looked at me then. Really looked. And his eyes weren't cold. They were just observant. Like he was calculating the wear on the soles of my shoes. I brought the coffee. As I set it down, the refrigerator man nearest the aisle, the one who had tried to order for the boss, let his hand drop, his knuckles brushing the outside of my thigh. It wasn't an accident, he smirked, his eyes greasy. You look tired, sweetheart, long night. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to step back, to throw the hot coffee in his face, but I needed this job. I needed the $4 in my pocket. I just stared at the countertop. Before I could breathe, there was a sound, a sharp, distinct click-click. Fabio Romano was tapping his spoon against the rim of his empty coffee cup. Twice. The goon's hand snapped back like he'd touched a hot stove. The smirk vanished, replaced by a pale, sick look. He stared at his pie plate. He didn't look at me again. Romano didn't raise his voice. He didn't look at his man. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable, and pushed his cup forward slightly. My coffee, please. I poured it, my hand shaking just enough to notice. He had done nothing violent. He had simply made a sound, and the threat vanished. It was the cleanest display of power I had ever seen. I walked away, my heart hammering against my ribs, while they ate in silence. I busied myself at the register. The rain slashed against the glass. The neon orchid sign painted the wet asphalt pink and blue. I hated that goon, but I also hated the quiet control of the man who owned him. I grabbed one of the thin paper napkins and a pen. It was stupid. It was reckless. I was tired of being pushed. My handwriting was shaky. If you're as polite as you look, please don't let your men bother the staff. I signed it, Mara, and, in a fit of something I couldn't name, drew a quick, clumsy outline of an orchid blossom next to my name. I tucked it under the edge of his bill and placed it on their table. Thanks for coming in. I turned and walked away, not waiting for a reaction. I could feel his eyes on my back. I kept cleaning, waiting for the shout, for the man to be sent over to drag me out. Nothing. A few minutes later, the bell chimed. They were gone. I went to the booth. The bill was paid, and on top of the check, there was a tip that made my breath catch. It was enough to cover rent. It was enough to make me feel sick. Next to the money was a business card. It was thick, creamy white cardstock, completely blank on the front. I flipped it over. The back was also blank, except for a small, embossed symbol pressed into the paper, a perfect, elegant stag. No name, no number. I pocketed the card and the money, finished my shift, and walked home through the gray, wet dawn, the eviction notice feeling heavier in my mind than ever. I woke up at noon to the sound of shouting in the hallway, not at my door, but near it. I peeked through the peephole. My landlord, a sweaty, unpleasant man named Kowalski, was yelling at my neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, about her kid's bicycle. I opened my door, bleary-eyed. "Leave her alone, Kowalski." He turned his greasy glare on me. "You're next, Devin. End of the week, you and your books." I slammed the door, my hands shaking with useless anger. I got ready for my morning shift, the dread settling in my stomach. When I walked out of the building's peeling front door, I stopped dead. The street was silent. There were 11 men. 11 men in identical dark suits, standing in a perfect crisp line on the cracked pavement of my miserable street. They weren't looking at me. They were looking forward. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, all 11 heads turned in perfect unison. One man, who stood slightly ahead of the others, stepped forward. He was older, with graying temples and an immaculate fold in his pocket square. "Miss Devon," he said. His voice was clear and polite, but it carried across the street. The entire neighborhood was watching from their windows. Kowalski, who had followed me out, froze on the steps. "Yes," my voice was a squeak. "Mr. Romano received your message," the man said. The other 10 men remained perfectly still. "The one on the napkin." I braced myself. This was it. This was the threat. They were here to scare me, to show me what happened when a waitress talked back. "He offers his apologies for his associate's behavior," the man continued, his face serene. "And he offers his compliments on your drawing. The orchid was a nice touch." I stared. I could not compute. "We are here to ensure your commute is untroubled." He gestured. A path opened between the suits. I walked through it, feeling like I was walking through a canyon of expensive wool. As I passed, the drizzle started up again, from nowhere. 2 umbrellas opened and were held over my head. We walked to the bus stop. Mrs. Petrov was watching from her window, her mouth open. Kowalski looked pale. When the bus hissed to a stop, the gray-templed man stepped on first. He paid my fare. He didn't use a pass. He used a crisp bill, told the driver to keep the change, and stepped off. Another suit held the door of the bus for me. "Have a pleasant day, Miss Devon," the gray-templed man said. The bus pulled away, leaving 11 men standing at attention on the curb. The diner was buzzing when I got there. The other waitresses cornered me. "Who were they, Mara?" I had no answer. I just tied on my apron and grabbed a coffee pot. The morning rush was chaotic, but under it, I felt a new, strange tension. Around 10 a.m., the bell chimed, but it wasn't a customer. It was the Harbor Development Authority, 3 men in cheap suits that screamed government contract, led by a man with a clipboard and a sour expression. "Orchid Diner," he announced, like he was reading a death sentence. "We're here for a structural integrity and lease compliance review." My boss, Sal, came wiping his hands on his apron. "Review, we just passed inspection last month." "New city ordinances, Sal," the HDA man sneered, tapping his clipboard. "Due to the Ravens Key redevelopment initiative, looks like your new rental assessment has increased, effective immediately, by about 300%. Sal turned white. "I say, 300, that's impossible. That'll close me." "Pay it or you're shuttered by Monday," the man said. As he turned to leave, one of his younger, smirking associates accidentally slammed his shoulder into me, hard enough to make me drop a plate. It shattered on the linoleum. "Watch where you're going, sweetheart," he whispered, his breath smelling like stale beer. I was shaking, not from fear this time, but from pure rage. This was how the world worked. not with a quiet tap of a spoon, but with a clipboard and a cheap shot. At that exact moment, I saw movement outside. Across the street, 3 cars had pulled up. They weren't the sleek black town cars from the morning. These were dented muscle cars, and the men getting out wore leather jackets with a snarling animal patch on the back. The Ocelot Syndicate, Romano's rivals. They weren't coming in. They were just watching, spreading out, marking the territory. The HDA men were leaving. The Ocelots were arriving. My boss was about to lose his diner. I was standing in a pile of broken ceramic, trapped between 2 different kinds of predator. Then, a new car slid into view. It was long, black, and silent as a shark. It parked directly in front of the diner, blocking the HDA's van. The Ocelots across the street paused, their casual menace tightening. The back window of the black car lowered, revealing nothing but shadow inside. A voice emerged from that shadow. It was the same low, quiet vibration I remembered from 3 a.m. "Miss Devon?" I turned, the shattered plate forgotten. "I read your note." Fabio Romano's voice said, "We have a common problem." He didn't get out of the car, and he didn't have to. The gray-templed man from the morning opened my door at the diner, his face impassive. "Mister, Romano asks if you will join him, in the back office." Sal, my boss, was already scurrying toward his tiny, cluttered office. "Yes, of course. Mr. Romano. Right this way. Mara, what's going on?" The HDA men were still visible, climbing into their cheap sedan, laughing, across the street. The Ocelots watched us, their expressions hidden behind sunglasses, even in the rain. I walked past the counter, my apron still stained with spilled coffee. The office smelled of old receipts and onions. Fabio Romano was standing by Sal's metal desk, dominating the small space without moving a muscle. The gray-templed man shut the door, and the sounds of the diner vanished. "Sal," Romano said, his voice quiet. Sal flinched. "Your new rent assessment. It's not legal." "Mr. Romano, I don't want any trouble." "You already have it," Romano said. "The HDA, the men across the street, they are the same problem. They are called Lumen Apex. The Ocelots provide the muscle. The HDA provides the paperwork. They are squeezing this whole block. They want the key." He turned his gaze to me. It was heavy, like a physical weight. "They made 2 mistakes tonight," he said. "The first was trying to intimidate Sal. The second was pushing you. They see a waitress. They see someone who doesn't fight back." "And what do you see?" I asked, my voice tight. "I see the woman who left the note. They bothered you, Miss Devon, and now they have my attention." He stepped closer, but not too close. "I'm not offering you violence. I am offering lawyers. I will have my attorneys file an injunction against the HDA by noon. I will pay for the upgrades Sal needs to get this building to code. He will be untouchable." I waited. The other shoe always drops. In exchange for what? "You're on the ground. You hear things. The people in this neighborhood trust you. I need you to be my eyes at street level. I just need you to nod when you see danger." I looked at his perfectly tailored suit, at the power radiating from him, and I thought of the eviction notice on my door. It was a lifeline. It was a chain. "I'm not a spy, Mr. Romano," I said, my voice shaking a little. "I'm not selling my soul." A flicker of something surprise, maybe respect, passed through his dark eyes. He didn't smile, but the tension in his shoulders eased. "I am not asking for your soul, Miss Devon." He paused, his gaze holding mine. "I'm just borrowing your courage for a few days." I left the diner with my head spinning. The Ocelots were gone. The black car was gone. The street was just a street again. But something had cracked open. When I got back to my tenement, my landlord, Kowalski, was waiting for me in the lobby, his face the color of spoiled milk. He was twisting a letter in his hands. "They were here," he whispered, his eyes darting to the door. "Men. Not your fancy men in suits, different from the HDA. What did they want, Kowalski?" He shoved the letter at me. It was on thick, expensive paper. The letterhead read Lumen Apex. It was a final offer to buy the entire building. They gave me 72 hours, he choked out. 72 hours to sell, or they're condemning the whole place. They said they know about the wiring, the foundation. They know everything. We all have to be out by the end of the week. It was the same problem. Sal's Diner, my home, all connected. Mara Devon. I turned. A man in a trench coat was standing on the steps. His suit was better than the HDA's, but it lacked the impossible tailoring of Romano's. It was an off-the-rack suit that tried too hard. Special Agent Clark, he said, flashing a badge from the National Commerce Integrity Commission, the NCIC. I'd never heard of it. I need a word. He pulled me aside, out of Kowalski's earshot. His breath was sour, like cheap coffee. We're building a major case against Fabio Romano, he said, his voice low and urgent. Racketeering, extortion, money laundering. You name it, he's dirty on it. We saw his men escorting you this morning. We saw you get into his car. You are way out of your depth, kid. He's helping us, I said, my voice weak. The HDA is trying to... The HDA is small time, Clark interrupted. Romano is the disease. He's poison, he'll use you, and then he'll throw you away. My advice, stay away. Go home, lock your door, and forget you ever saw him. We're closing in, and you do not want to be standing next to him when we do. He handed me a card. Call me when you decide to be smart. He walked off, leaving me on the cracked steps, caught between three invisible armies, Romano, the HDA, and now the feds. I spent the next few hours in my tiny apartment, the walls feeling thinner than ever. I was trapped. At 6 p.m., there was a sharp, polite knock. It was the gray-templed man. He stood in my hallway, looking completely out of place, like a diamond in a dumpster. Miss Devon, Matt, he said, his voice as smooth as ever. Mister, Romano is aware of the situation with your landlord. He's also, aware of Agent Clark's visit. Of course he was. The thought sent a chill down my spine. He held out a slim, black key card. Mister, Romano insists you not stay here tonight. This building is exposed. This is a key to a residence at the Aurora Spire. It is empty. It is safe. The Aurora Spire, the tallest building in Port Aurelia, a glass and steel needle that scraped the clouds, owned entirely by the Romano Consortium. He was offering me a cage, a gilded one. I looked at the key card. I looked at the man. I thought of Agent Clark's warning. I thought of Kowalski's fear. No, I said. The man's eyebrow twitched. It was the first human expression I'd seen from him. I'm not running, I said, finding a sliver of strength. I'm not his guest, and I'm not his prisoner, but you tell him, if he's offering protection, I'll use it my way. For what purpose? I'm working my shift tonight. I'll take the bus home. I want his men, the 11 suits, to meet me at the bus stop. I want to walk from the corner to this door, and I want to see exactly who is watching this building. The man was silent for a long moment. He studied my face, perhaps searching for the courage Romano had mentioned. He nodded once, a crisp, decisive movement. As you wish, Miss Devon. He pocketed the key card and was gone. That night, the shift was agony. Every customer looked like a threat. At 2 a.m., I got off the bus at my stop. The street was dark, empty. I took one step, and they were there, emerging from the alleys, from the doorways, 11 men in dark suits, moving in perfect, terrifying silence. They didn't walk with me. They formed a perimeter, a moving box of shadows with me at the center. As we neared my building, a dark gray sedan parked half a block down suddenly roared to life. Its lights flashed on, and it tore down the street, burning rubber. One of the suits spoke into his sleeve. Gray sedan, license plate 7 Kilo Bravo 229er. Captured. I stopped at the crumbling entrance to my building. The men stopped with me. Wait, I said, the hallway. I walked inside. The men following, I went straight to the old dented electrical panel near the mailboxes. The cover was slightly ajar. I pulled it open. Tucked inside, Spliced into a mess of old wires was a tiny black square, a lens, no bigger than a pinhead, a single, blinking red light. The gray-templed man stepped forward and examined it, his face hard. "Is it yours?" I whispered. "Not ours, Frauer," he said, his voice clipped with distaste. He produced a small tool and snipped the wires, pulling the device free. "It's cheap. Low resolution, battery-powered, disposable." He held it up. "Ocelot's preferred brand. They've been watching the building. They've been watching you." My stomach turned to ice. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a text message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a picture. Mrs. Petrov's son, Alex. He was 15. The photo showed him walking home from school, headphones on, blissfully unaware, his backpack slung over one shoulder. It was a sniper's photo, taken from a distance. A second text came through. "Keep your new friends. The kids on your street are easy to find. Stay out of the key." The blood drained from my face, replaced by a sudden, hot, blinding rage. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about Sal. They were threatening children. They were threatening Alex. "Get me Romano," I said to the gray-templed man, my voice a low, dangerous tremor. "Get him on the phone, now!" A minute later, the phone was in my hand. "They're threatening the kids in my building," I said, no greeting, no preamble. "They sent me a picture of my neighbor's son, Ocelot. You said you had a problem with them. Fix this." There was silence on the other end. I could hear the faint sound of a car engine. "You're a monster, right?" I pushed, my voice cracking. "I've heard the stories. Isn't this what you do? Go? Be a monster. Stop them." His voice, when it came, was cold as the night air. "No." I was stunned. "No, they are threatening a child." "Yes," he said, "and that is the one line no one crosses. They want me to be a monster. Miss Devon, they want me to start a war in the street. They want blood. They want Agent Clark to have a reason to shut me down while Ocelot and the HDA gut this neighborhood. I will not give it to them." "So what, we do nothing?" "We do everything," he corrected, "but we do it my way. With the light, it burns them worse." I heard him speak to someone else, his voice sharp, authoritative. "Get me Lucan at the Community Harbor Trust. I want a protective injunction filed for every resident of this address by sunrise. Yes, against Lumen Apex and the HDA. And get Vesper on the line. I want her to start digging. I want to know who signed that HDA redevelopment order. I want to know where Councilwoman Evangeline Locke eats her dinner." He was back on the line with me. He wasn't sending killers. He was sending lawyers. He was sicking his corporate, legitimate infrastructure on them. "They want to use the dark. Miss Devon, Onessa," he said. "I will drag them into the light. You're angry. Good. Use it. But you do it my way. Legally." I leaned against the peeling wallpaper, the cheap camera dead in the suit's hand, the picture of Alex burning on my phone screen. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "It's simple," Fabio Romano said. "I protect your decency. Miss Devon, you protect my truth." I worked the double, wired on cheap coffee and adrenaline. The threat against Alex Petrov had settled in my bones, a cold, hard anger that burned away my exhaustion. Tonight, the 11 suits were not a parade. They were shadows. I'd see a flicker of movement in the alley across the street, the outline of a broad shoulder in a darkened doorway, the glow of a cigarette cupped in a hand 2 blocks down. They weren't escorting me. They were saturating the block. They owned the rain-slicked pavement. The diner was empty, save for a few night shift stragglers nursing their coffee. It was just after midnight. The bell above the door didn't chime. It was thrown open, slamming against the wall with a crash. 3 of them. They weren't ocelots, not the main crew. These were the hyenas that followed the lions. The glass jackals? They wore hoodies and that same snarling animal patch, and they were high on something cheap and violent. "Look at this dump!" The leader, a wiry man with dead eyes, shouted. He kicked a chair, sending it scraping across the tiles. "Heard this place serves Romano's dogs." Sal, my boss, came out from the kitchen, holding a spatula like a weapon. Get out, we're closing. We're not going anywhere, the man sneered. He grabbed a handful of sugar packets from the counter and threw them across the floor. His two friends started laughing. One of them picked up a salt shaker and hurled it at the specials board, shattering the glass. My heart was a fist in my throat, but the rage was colder, sharper. This was Ocelot's answer. This was the pushback. As the leader advanced on Sal, I reached under the counter. My hand found the small plastic button. I didn't hesitate. I pressed it hard and held it for 3 seconds. The silent alarm. The leader heard the faint click. He turned his dead eyes on me. "What did you do, you little—" He never finished. The front door opened. This time, with a quiet sigh of its hydraulics, the gray-templed man stepped in, wiping his feet politely on the mat. He held the door open. One by one, the other 10 suits filed in. They didn't run, they didn't shout, they just walked. They moved through the diner, their wet shoes squeaking on the tiles, a tide of black wool and silent intent. The glass jackals froze. The laughter died in their throats. The suits didn't look at them. They didn't draw weapons. They simply took seats. They pulled out chairs at the counter. They slid into the booths, one by one. They filled every empty space in the diner. They sat straight-backed, hands folded on the tables, their collective gaze fixed on the menu board. The silence was absolute. Heavier than any threat, they had created a safe zone by sheer, immovable presence. The leader of the jackals looked around, his bravado evaporating. He was a rat in a box full of panthers. "We were just leaving," he muttered. He and his crew backed toward the door, tripping over the chair they had kicked. The 11 suits just sat there, an army in repose. The jackals scrambled out into the rain. The door closed. The diner was silent, except for the drip of water from their coats. The gray-templed man turned to me. "Coffee, Miss Devon, if you please, for 11. I was so shaky I could barely lift the pot. Minutes later, the door opened again. It was Fabio Romano. He took in the scene, the sugar on the floor, the broken glass, his 11 men sitting patiently in the booths. His gaze found me. He didn't say a word. He walked behind the counter, found the broom and dustpan Sal kept by the ice machine, and walked back to the shattered specials sign. He began sweeping the glass himself. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low. He didn't look up from his task. "No," I managed. "I'm fine. They just made a mess. Glass can be replaced." He finished sweeping, dumped the shards into the trash, and put the broom back. "They won't be back." He had just turned to me when the flash of red and blue lights filled the diner. A van, not a police car, screeched to a halt outside. The HDA. The same sour-faced man from before burst in, but this time he had an audience. A younger man was with him, holding a phone on a gimbal, the red light indicating he was live streaming. "Here we are, citizens of Port Aurelia," the HDA man announced, his voice booming for the camera. "A surprise safety inspection at the Orchid Diner, following an anonymous tip. We have reason to believe this establishment is a severe fire hazard." Sal looked like he was going to collapse. "A fire hazard, we just passed." "Our records show multiple violations," the man said, shoving his clipboard at Sal. "Faulty wiring, inadequate suppression. We're looking at an immediate closure. Pending a full review. This place is a death trap." This was it, the other arm of the snake. The Ocelots provided the terror. The HDA provided the legal execution. Fabio Romano, who had been watching this performance with a look of profound calm, stepped forward. He was holding a thick, leather-bound file. He didn't hand it to the HDA man. He placed it gently on the counter, right in front of the live streaming camera. "You must be mistaken," Fabio said, his voice polite, reasonable. "Perhaps your records are out of date, May." The HDA man scoffed. "And who are you?" "A concerned investor," Fabio said smoothly. "The Romano Consortium, through its community outreach program, funded a full-scale fire suppression upgrade for this entire block. The work was completed last month. That file contains the city permits, the inspector's final signature, and the engineering report showing this building system now exceeds the city code by approximately 50%. The HDA man's face went from smug to sheet white. He looked at the file, at Fabio, and then at the phone broadcasting his humiliation. The only fire hazard here, Fabio continued, his voice dropping an octave, is your fraudulent report. I suggest you and your camera leave. Now. The man grabbed his clipboard and fled. The live stream feed abruptly cut off. Fabio turned to his men, who were still sitting patiently. You've had your coffee. It's time to go. They stood in unison, leaving cash on every table, far more than enough to cover their orders. Fabio looked at me. My car is outside. You are not going back to your apartment tonight. Not after this. I didn't argue. A silent pursuit followed. The gray-templed man, whose name I learned was Alistair, drove. I sat in the back of the town car, wrapped in silence. A pair of headlights appeared 3 blocks back, a dark sedan, clinging to our shadow. I tensed, my hand on the door handle. Alistair didn't speed up. He didn't swerve. He simply made a right turn onto a street I didn't recognize, then a left. He navigated the back alleys of Port Aurelia with an unnerving, pre-planned precision. He took a one-way street, crossed an intersection just as the light turned red, and then ducked into a private parking garage under a high-rise. The tail was gone. It wasn't a chase, it was a dismissal. We arrived at the Aurora Spire. The lobby was all marble and cold, recessed lighting. Fabio was waiting by the elevators. The air was frigid after the rain, and I was still in my thin waitress uniform. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. Fabio didn't hesitate. He was shrugging out of his heavy, dark wool overcoat as he approached. He didn't just hand it to me, he draped it over my shoulders. It was impossibly heavy, impossibly warm, and it smelled like clean wool and something faintly spicy, like cedar. His hands rested on my shoulders for a fraction of a second, his grip firm. It wasn't possessive, it was grounding. A simple, physical statement. You are here. You are safe. He guided me into the elevator. It was glass on 3 sides. As we began to move, the car rising silently, the whole of Port Aurelia burst into view. The Kestrel Bridge, the dark water of the harbor, the thousands of lights, it was all spread out below us like a carpet of fallen stars. The silence in the small, moving box was electric. I was acutely aware of him standing beside me, of his scent on the coat, of the heat rolling off him. I caught our reflection in the glass, 2 dark figures against the glittering backdrop. For a moment, as the lights of the city passed through us, our silhouettes seemed to merge, to become one. My heart hammered against my ribs, a fast, heavy beat I was sure he could hear. It was an attraction so strong, so undeniable. It felt like a physical pull, like gravity. The elevator doors opened, not into a penthouse, but onto a roof. It was a greenhouse, a massive, glass-walled structure, warm and humid, filled with the scent of damp earth and herbs. Raindrops pattered softly on the ceiling. In the center, glass tanks bubbled under soft lights. Fabio walked over to one of them, where thyme was growing in a hydroponic solution. He touched a leaf, his fingers gentle. I built this place, he said, his voice quiet, almost a confession, to remind myself to breathe. He looked at me, his dark eyes reflecting the soft green lights of the tanks. They try to pull you under. The HDA, the ocelots, they thrive in the dark, in the mud. They want you to forget what clean air feels like. He held out the black key card from before, the one I had refused. This isn't a cage. Mara, it's a safe place to work. My legal team, the Community Harbor Trust, they have the teeth, but you have the neighborhood. You know the people, they're hurting. He was offering me a job. I need a civilian advisor for the CPH, he said. Someone to work with Lucan pride, my chief counsel, someone to be the voice for the people the HDA is trying to erase, someone to help me expose Lumen Apex for what it is. I looked from the key card to his face. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a saint. He was a man building a greenhouse on top of a skyscraper. using lawyers instead of guns to fight a war. I thought of Sal's face. I thought of Alex Petrov's picture. I took the key card from his hand. Okay, I'll do it. I'll be your advisor. The Community Harbor Trust wasn't an office. It was a war room disguised as a nonprofit, located on the 20th floor of a neutral downtown building. It was all polished concrete and glass partitions. It felt miles away from the Orchid Diner, but the fight was the same. Fabio introduced me to Lucan Pride on my first day. Lucan wasn't like Romano's suits. He wore a rumpled linen jacket, his tie was loose, and his eyes were tired but incredibly sharp. He looked like a man who ran on coffee and constitutional law. Mara Devon, he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm. The one who writes notes. Fabio told me you have courage. I'd prefer you have a talent for details. Fabio, standing by the window, watched us. She has both. He turned to Lucan. She's your civilian liaison. Keep her safe. Keep her effective. Mr. Pride. I started. Lucan, please, he said, gesturing to a massive whiteboard covered in names and arrows. Mister, Romano gives us the resources. We provide the righteous fury. Your job is to give us the stories. Juries hate spreadsheets. They believe in people. My new life wasn't about aprons, it was about files. I spent the first 2 days in a conference room with Lucan, learning the case. The CPH had been fighting the HDA for a year, but it was all procedural. We had the what extortion. We needed the why and the how. I started with the documents we'd saved from Sal's diner, the HDA's fraudulent fire report. Then I cross-referenced the names on that report with public property records. It was tedious, slow work. On the third day, I found it. A land sale contract for a block of warehouses down by the pier. The buyer was Lumen Apex. The shell company Fabio had mentioned. The seller was a holding company. But the contract was countersigned, authorized by the Harbor Development Authority. The signature at the bottom was a flamboyant, arrogant loop Evangeline Locke, the HDA chairwoman. Lucan, I called out, my voice hoarse. I have Locke's signature on a Lumen Apex deal. That's good, he said, not looking up from his own stack of papers. It ties her to the company, but it's not illegal. She'll just say it's civic development. But look at the date, I insisted, sliding the paper across the table. March 15th, 2 years ago. So, I remembered the name from the newspaper. She won her re-election campaign on March 20th, 5 days later. Lucan's head snapped up. His tired eyes were suddenly electric. He was at his computer in a second, his fingers flying. He pulled up campaign finance disclosures. Ocelot Charities, he read aloud, his voice dropping to a whisper. A $500,000 donation, unspecified, cleared on March 16th. My blood went cold, 1 day after she signed the deal. Lumen Apex buys the land with Locke's approval. Lucan murmured, pacing now. Ocelot Charities pays her campaign fund. The ocelots and the HDA are the same animal. This is the spine. Mara, we just found the spine. The next piece came from a ghost. An encrypted email landed in the CPH's general inbox. There was no text, just an attachment, a password-protected zip file. Fabio's tech specialist, a woman named Vesper, whom I'd never met but whose name was spoken with reverence, cracked it in 20 minutes. Inside was a complete set of internal HDA fire risk maps for Raven's Key, and next to it, the public-facing set. They were not the same. On the public map, Sal's Diner and my tenement building were bright red, marked as high risk. On the internal map, they were green. They faked it, I whispered, staring at the two images side by side. They falsified official data to condemn buildings. It wasn't just to condemn. Fabio said he had entered the room so quietly I hadn't noticed. He pointed to the map. It was to lower the property values before Lumen Apex made the offer. They terrify the owners with a $100,000 fine, then offer them $10,000 to walk away. It's clean, it's brilliant, and it's evil. The employee who sent this, I said, they're in incredible danger. Vesper is scrubbing the metadata, Fabio said. They'll never be found. He looked at me. Lucan has the paper. You have the people. Go. My role shifted. I became a collector of stories. Lucan gave me a small digital recorder. I went back to my neighborhood, but not as a waitress. I sat in living rooms, in back rooms of barbershops, in the kitchens of bakeries. At first, they were scared. I can't talk. Mara, the ocelots. You don't have to, I'd say, my voice steady, learning the rhythm of reassurance. I'm not asking you to testify. I'm just asking you to tell me what happened. Did the HDA visit you? Did they give you a red paper? Did a man from Lumen Apex visit you the next day? I learned to be fearless by borrowing their fear. I'd ask the right questions. I'd record their answers. And I'd promise them one thing. This is for Lucan pride at the CPH. I'd tell them, your name will not be used, your face will not be shown, but your story will be heard. We had the paper. Now we had the voices. A woman named Jess from Opal City Watch, a tiny independent news blog that ran on a shoestring budget, got wind of what we were doing. She met me at a neutral coffee shop. I hear you're the one poking the HDA bear, she said, pushing her glasses up her nose. I'm doing a story on the Ravens Key redevelopment. The official line is urban renewal. I'm guessing you have a different take. I have proof of fraud, I said simply, and I have interviews with 6 families and 4 business owners who are being illegally displaced. Her eyes widened. Give it to me. I'll run it tonight. Not so fast, I said, channeling Lucan. You'll run it, but you'll do it my way. The interviews are audio only. The voices must be distorted, the documents. You can show them, but not the leak. Not the internal maps, not yet. She agreed. We had a deal. The story was set to air at 9 p.m. the next day. I was back at the CPH office that night, working late with Lucan, prepping the files for Jess. We were exhausted, running on fumes. Fabio walked in around 2 a.m. We didn't hear him, but the mood in the room shifted. He was just there. He looked at the laptops, the scattered papers, the empty coffee cups. He didn't say anything about the work. He just went to the small kitchenette, and a few minutes later, the scent of fresh mint filled the air. He came back with 2 steaming mugs. He placed one by Lucan's elbow and the other next to my laptop. Peppermint tea, he said. It's from the greenhouse. You'll sleep better. I was so tired. My hand was visibly shaking as I reached for the mug. I was trying to click a mouse, but my fingers kept missing. He saw it. Gently. He put his hand over mine. Not my whole hand, just his fingers. Resting on the back of my wrist, his skin was warm. The touch was light, but it stopped the shaking instantly. It wasn't a caress, it was an anchor. You're done for tonight, Mara, he said, his voice soft. I looked up at him. The attraction from the elevator, that heavy, magnetic pull, was still there, but it was complicated now by this quiet, startling tenderness. He was a man who commanded armies of suits, but he'd just made me tea. The story airs tomorrow. I said, it's important. Which is why you need to rest, he said. His thumb brushed the pulse point on my wrist. Once, a tiny movement that sent a jolt straight up my arm. He pulled his hand away. Go. Alistair will take you to the spire. The next night, at 8:55, the entire CPH team was gathered around a monitor, waiting for the Opal City watch stream to start. At 9 p.m., the screen went black. Website not found, and Lucan read, refreshing the page. She's down. Jess is down. They cut her feed, I said, a sick feeling in my stomach. Ocelot, the HDA, they DDoSed her. They took the site offline. Lucan slammed his hand on the desk. Damn it, we lose all momentum. Fabio, who had been standing in the back, just took out his phone and he made one call. Vesper? They shut down Opal City Watch. No retaliation. I want you to do the opposite. He paused. Call the station owner. Tell her the Romano Media Lab is at her disposal. I want her site migrated to our servers. I want it shielded, and I want that story up and running in 1 hour. Whatever it takes. He hung up, and he looked at me. They attack. We protect. We build. That's how we win. An hour later, the site was back up, faster than before. The story ran. The next morning, the city was on fire with the news. My phone rang. It was Agent Clark, the man from the NCIC. "Mara Devon," he said, his voice slick and falsely friendly. "You've been making a lot of noise. Dangerous noise. I think it's time you came in. For your own safety, we can offer you witness protection." I knew a trap when I heard one. "I don't need protection, Agent." "That's not really a request. You're swimming with sharks, kid. You're affiliated with Romano now. That makes you a person of interest. Get in here, or we'll come and get you." I met him in a sterile interrogation room at the NCIC's Port Aurelia field office. The two-way mirror was obvious. "So, the waitress becomes a crusader," Clark said, leaning back in his chair, trying to look casual. "Or is it consigliere? What's he paying you?" "Mara a condo at the Spire, a new car." "I'm a civilian advisor for the Community Harbor Trust," I said, my voice even. "That's a Romano front. You're a community advisor, like Al Capone was a furniture dealer. You're gang-affiliated now. Mara, your name is in our file, right next to his. Anything you've found is inadmissible. Fruit of the poisonous tree. You're tainted." This was their move, not to arrest me, to discredit me, to label me. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the cold steel table. I thought of Sal, of Alex, of the families who had trusted me with their stories. "I am not affiliated with anyone," I said, my voice low and clear, cutting through his smugness. "I'm not yours. I'm not his." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, then who are you?" "I'm the person you all forgot about," I said. "I'm not a gangster. I'm not a cop. I stand with the people who don't have a voice, and you're all about to hear us." The meeting with Agent Clark left a residue, a cold film of manipulation that I couldn't scrub off. He wanted to brand me, to make me a tool or a liability. It made the work at the CPH feel even more urgent. I spent the next 2 days buried in spreadsheets, tracing the lines of corporate ownership from Lumen Apex to offshore accounts, my eyes burning from the screen. Lucan and I had been working for almost 36 hours straight, fueled by the bad coffee from the office machine. Finally, he had slumped over his desk, fast asleep. I couldn't. My mind was a racetrack of names, dates, and account numbers. I needed air, or at least different air. I took the private elevator up. The key card Fabio had given me felt heavy in my hand. I didn't go to the apartment, I went to the roof. The greenhouse was a pocket of warmth and life suspended in the cold, dark sky. The rain had started again, a soft, relentless tapping on the glass ceiling, blurring the lights of Port Aurelia into a watercolor smear. The only light inside came from the bubbling hydroponic tanks, casting a soft, green glow on the pathways. The air smelled of damp soil, mint and ozone. I found a wooden bench tucked between a row of basil and something with broad, leafy palms. I sat, pulling the files onto my lap, but the numbers just swam. My eyelids were lead. I told myself I would just rest my eyes for 5 minutes. I fell asleep to the sound of the rain, my cheek pressed against a zoning report, my body finally surrendering to the crushing weight of exhaustion. I woke with a violent jolt, that cold sweat panic of not knowing where you are. My heart hammered, my breath catching in my throat. He was sitting on a bench opposite me. Fabio. He wasn't moving. He was just watching me, his hands resting loosely on his knees. He was sitting a careful, respectful 10 feet away. A thick cashmere blanket was draped over me, soft and incredibly warm. It wasn't there when I fell asleep. I stared at him, my mind thick with sleep. He must have come in, seen me, found a blanket, and covered me, all without waking me. He didn't speak. He just held my gaze. It wasn't a question, exactly. It was an acknowledgement. I am here. You are awake. My body was still thrumming with the leftover panic from the HDA, from Ocelot, from Clark. But as I looked at him, sitting so still in the green-lit quiet, the fear began to recede. He was the most dangerous man I had ever met, and he was the only person in the world I felt safe with. Slowly, testing the air, I sat up, letting the blanket pool in my lap. He watched me, his expression unreadable but attentive. I made the decision. I stood, my legs stiff. I crossed the small distance between us. I didn't ask. I just sat down next to him on his bench. It was a clear, deliberate choice. I was so tired. I didn't have the strength for walls. I just let my head rest on his shoulder. His whole body went rigid. I could feel the muscles in his shoulder and chest tense under the perfect suit jacket. He was a fortress preparing for an attack. I closed my eyes, too weary to care if it was a mistake. For a full minute, we sat like that, me leaning on a block of tense, unyielding muscle. Then slowly, like ice melting from the inside out, I felt him exhale. The tension left him in a single, quiet breath. His shoulders softened, accepting my weight. I felt his hand move, and I flinched, but he was just lifting his arm. He settled it on the bench behind me, not quite touching me, giving me space. We just breathed, the sound of the rain, the soft bubble of the water tanks. My breathing was ragged with exhaustion. His was slow and deep. I focused on it. Inhale, exhale. After a few minutes, my own breathing started to match his. A strand of damp hair had stuck to my cheek. I felt his fingers, hesitant for a fraction of a second, then surprisingly gentle. He brushed the hair from my face, tucking it behind my ear. His fingertips were calloused, but warm. A simple, human gesture. It almost made me cry. "I don't need a savior," I whispered to the lapel of his jacket. My voice was a raw, tired thing. "I'm so tired of men trying to save me or own me or use me. I need a shoulder that doesn't judge." I felt his cheek rest against the top of my head. His voice, when it came, was a low rumble against my ear. "I'm listening." That was all. Just 2 words, but it was everything. I turned my head, lifting it from his shoulder. We were close now. So close I could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the individual dark fibers in his suit. His gaze wasn't on my mouth, it was on my eyes, and he was searching them for something. The air in the greenhouse, which had been warm and humid, was suddenly charged, thick and electric. That magnetic pull from the elevator was back, but now it had a voice, and it was whispering my name. He didn't move, and he was giving me the choice. He was giving me the power to close the last few inches, or to pull away. I didn't pull away. He watched my eyes, and I watched his, and in that shared look, he asked the question. I gave the answer. I leaned in. His lips met mine. It was slow. It wasn't a kiss of possession or hunger. It was a kiss of discovery. It was hesitant, then sure. It was warm, and it tasted faintly of the peppermint tea he had made me. His hand, the one that had been on the bench, moved. It came to rest on my back, high up, between my shoulder blades, a point of support. His touch was firm, grounding me. A wave of heat washed through me, so potent it made me tremble. It wasn't just desire. It was the shocking, overwhelming feeling of being seen, of being met, right where I was, by someone who understood the fight. I let out a small sound, and the kiss deepened. I lifted my hands, my arms wrapping around his neck, my fingers sinking into his thick, dark hair. I felt his entire body respond. A tremor of controlled strength ran through him, his muscles tensing, his grip on my back tightening just enough to pull me closer. He was a man made of coiled power, but he was deliberately, actively holding it in check. He was being gentle. It was too much. It was perfect. I felt a small, breathless laugh escape me, right against his mouth. He pulled back, just enough to look at me, and a slow, almost surprised smile touched his own lips. It transformed his face. The Mafia boss was gone. It was just Fabio, a simple, profound joy, as ridiculous and fragile as a flower growing on a skyscraper. He leaned his forehead against mine. His other hand came up, cupping my jaw, his thumb stroking the line of my cheekbone. The air between us was heavy, our breath fogging the cold glass of the greenhouse. My heart was a drum against my ribs, echoing the rhythm of the rain lashing the roof. We stayed like that, just breathing each other in. He lowered his head, his lips brushing the sensitive skin of my throat, then tracing a line up to my jaw. He whispered my name, Mara, and the sound of it, spoken in that low, intimate rumble, unraveled something deep inside me. I tilted my head, giving him access, my hands tightening on his shoulders. He pressed a kiss just below my ear, his embrace solid, his warmth enveloping me. Every nerve in my body was alive, burning with a clean, sharp fire. This wasn't the dark, muddy world of the HDA. This was the clean air he'd talked about. He drew back, his eyes dark, his breathing as unsteady as mine. He kept his forehead pressed to mine. "When you say enough, I stop," he whispered, his voice rough. "When you say more, I listen to that too." It was the most honest, powerful thing anyone had ever said to me. It was the ultimate respect. I looked into his eyes, and I saw my own exhaustion, my own fight reflected there. "More," I whispered back, my voice shaking. "More? By saving the neighborhood first. We have work to do. Fabio." A slow smile spread across his face. It was a smile of pure admiration. "Yes, we do." He didn't try to kiss me again. Instead, he just held me. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me tight against his chest, his chin resting on top of my head. I pressed my ear to his suit, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. It was the safest I had ever felt. We sat there for a long time, two people in a glass box, suspended above a city that was trying to tear us apart. The rain washed the windows, and the green light from the herb tanks bathed us. I looked out at the blurred city lights, and I saw the green glow reflected in the glass, and in my own eyes. It wasn't just the light from the tanks. It was hope. The moment in the greenhouse had changed the air. The fight was no longer just about the neighborhood. It was about the small, quiet space we had carved out against the rain. The next morning, the CPH office was electric. Fabio stood at the head of the conference table, Lucan at his side. The suits were gone. This was the corporate team, the legal minds, the data analysts. "We begin Operation Ebbtide," Fabio said. His voice was crisp. "All business. This is not a street fight. This is a siege. We use the law. We use the media. We use their own bureaucracy against them. Minimal action, maximum exposure." He pointed to a name on the whiteboard I hadn't seen before, Vesper Knox. "Vesper," he said, tapping the name. "Where are we on the cloud?" A voice, synthesized and filtered, came from a speaker on the table. "I'm in Mr. Romano. Lumen Apex uses a third-party server with lazy security protocols. Their encryption was disappointing." Lucan grinned, looking like a kid on Christmas. "And the maps, Vesper." "I have them," the voice said. "The originals. The ones before Evangeline Locke's office digitally altered the risk assessments. I have the metadata. I have the user logs. I have the exact timestamp showing her assistant saved the fake map on March 12th. I'm downloading the entire drive now." A quiet cheer went through the room. We had the gun, and we had the fingerprints. "Good," Fabio said. "Lucan, prepare the injunction, Mara." I looked up. "You have the street. We have the data. Now we need the faces." My part of the heist wasn't digital. It was analog. I hit the pavement. I went back to the Orchid Diner. I went to the barber shop. I went to Mrs. Petrov's apartment. I had a stack of legal-sized papers in my satchel. "Sal," I said, sliding the paper onto the counter, "this is a class action petition. We're asking the Port Aurelia District Court for a temporary restraining order to stop the HDA, to stop any eviction." He looked at the dense text, his eyes filled with fear. "Mara, if I sign this, the ocelots—" "They already came, Sal," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "They already did their worst. This is how we fight back. I am not promising you a win. I can't promise you they won't try something else. But I am promising that we will stand with you, legally, in the light." He looked at me, then at the paper. He picked up my pen and signed his name. One by one, I collected them. The baker, the tailor, the old woman in apartment 3. I collected 12 signatures by noon. Lucan Pride, his linen suit rumpled, filed the motion at 2 p.m. We didn't have to wait long. The judge, a formidable woman named Judge Astor, called an emergency hearing. She was not impressed. "Mr. Pride," she said, her voice echoing in the half-empty courtroom. "I have a petition here based on allegations of fraud. That is a civil matter. It requires discovery, depositions. It does not warrant an emergency restraining order. Where is the imminent threat? Where is the proof of an immediate danger to public safety?" Lucan argued, but she cut him off. "I will not shut down a city agency on the word of a dozen nervous shopkeepers. You have until tomorrow, 9 a.m., to bring me proof of an imminent threat, or I am dismissing this petition." We left the court defeated. "She's right," Lucan muttered, yanking at his tie. "Fraud isn't a fire. We can't prove Ocelot is the muscle without showing a crime." The anonymous email arrived an hour later. Vesper flagged it. It was from our HDA whistleblower. One line, Pier 9, East Warehouse. "Ask them what's in the barrels. They're moving it tonight." "This is it," I said to Fabio. He was quiet for a moment. "It's a trap." "I know," I said, "or it's a chance. We don't engage. We don't fight. We're not after them. We're after the evidence. We need a camera." He looked at me, then at Alistair, who was standing by the door. "Take the team," Fabio said to him. "No weapons. Recording only. You are ghosts, if you are seen. You abort," Miss Devon directs. That night felt like the old nights, but I wasn't a waitress anymore. We moved through the industrial docks, a silent team of 12, 11 suits and me. The air smelled of salt, rust, and dead fish. Pier 9 was a dark, skeletal structure. Alistair's team moved like smoke. They disabled 3 security cameras without touching them, using some kind of remote jammer. They picked a lock, and we were inside. It was dark. We used low-light cameras, and we found them. Hundreds of 55-gallon drums, stacked 3 high. They had no labels, just a stenciled code. A sickly, chemical smell hung in the air, catching in the back of my throat. "They're not moving anything," Alistair whispered, his camera panning the silent warehouse. "This is storage, illegal dumping." "That's Ocelot's chemical waste," I whispered back. "From their processing plants. This is a massive environmental hazard. This is the imminent threat." A suit by the door held up a hand. "Vehicle." We melted back into the shadows. An Ocelot truck pulled up. 2 men got out, surveyed the lock Alistair had already bypassed, and nodded, satisfied. They drove off. We were gone 30 seconds later, the footage secure. We were too late to stop the counterattack. When we got back to the CPH building at dawn, they were already there. A crowd of about 50 people was on the steps, carrying pre-printed signs. "Romano's consortium is a cancer. CPH is a mafia front. Don't let the mob take our quay." A news van was already filming. It was Ocelot's move, a paid-for protest. Lucan grabbed my arm. "Don't engage. It just makes them look legitimate." But I saw Sal. He was standing on the edge of the crowd, his face pale, watching the phonies protest. This was his neighborhood they claimed to be protecting. I broke away from Lucan, grabbed a battery-powered bullhorn from the CPH security desk, and walked out the front doors. "My name is Mara Devon," I shouted, my voice booming over their fake chants. The crowd quieted, turning to look at me. The news camera swung in my direction. "I live here," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "I work here. I see some of you here, and I don't recognize you. You say you're here to protect the key. Great. I am too. So let's talk." I pointed to the news camera. "If you have a real story, if you have been personally threatened by the CPH, I invite you to come up here, right now. State your full, real name and tell your story to the camera. We're listening." A dead silence fell. The protesters looked at each other. They were paid to hold signs, not to commit perjury on camera. A few people at the front started booing, but the passion was gone. They started to drift away, covering their faces from the camera. In 2 minutes, the crowd had vanished. A black sedan pulled up. Agent Clark got out, his face a mask of smug fury. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Fabio, who had just stepped out of the building to stand beside me. "Fabio Romano," Clark said, holding up a paper. "You're subpoenaed. Grand jury testimony, tomorrow, 8 a.m. It's over." Fabio didn't even look at the paper. "Alistair," he said, "get the car. We're going to the NCIC offices." Clark blinked. I said, "Tomorrow." "I'm here now," Fabio said. "I have nothing to hide, and my advisor is coming with me." He nodded at me. We walked into the federal building. It was a power play, but not with guns. It was a power play of absolute transparency. We weren't hiding. They put us in the same interrogation room as before. Clark sat across from us, his arrogance returning. "A subpoena, and you bring your girlfriend. Cute." Fabio just watched him, his hands folded on the table. "I have a few questions," I said. Clark laughed. "You don't get it, sweetheart. You're not the one asking questions." "I am," I said. "I'm an advisor for the Community Harbor Trust. We're preparing a civil suit against the HDA for massive, coordinated fraud. As you know, the NCIC provides federal grant money to the HDA for port development projects. We've been reviewing those allocations." Clark's smile faltered. "We see a grant for $200,000, approved by your office, for structural review of the Ravens Key District." I continued, my voice steady. "The same district the HDA is currently trying to condemn using fraudulent maps. We were just wondering what the NCIC's oversight process is for those funds. We can't seem to find any public reports on how that money was spent." Clark's face went from pink to white. He was being implicated. "You," he stammered, "you are accusing a federal agent." "I'm not accusing anyone," I said, leaning forward. "I'm just a waitress who's good at math, and the numbers don't add up. It looks like you're funding the very fraud we're fighting, or you're just incompetent. Which is it, Agent Clark?" Fabio didn't say a word. He just watched. Clark stood up, knocking his chair over. "Get out! Get out! This interview is over." Lucan Pride was in Judge Astor's chambers at 8:50 a.m. The next morning, he presented 2 things. First, the crystal-clear, time-stamped footage of an Ocelot-controlled warehouse filled with hundreds of barrels of unlabeled, hazardous chemicals, constituting an immediate and severe public safety threat. Second, a copy of the NCIC grant allocation, showing federal funds being funneled into the HDA's fraudulent project. The judge was silent for a full minute. Her face was granite. She picked up her gavel. "It is the order of this court," she announced, "that a temporary restraining order is granted the Harbor Development Authority, Lumen Apex, and all their subsidiaries are hereby enjoined from all eviction proceedings, fee assessments, and property seizures within the Ravens Key District for a period of 30 days, pending a full investigation." We had won. It wasn't a victory. It was a shield. We had 30 days. The 30-day injunction was a shield, but it was also a target. Victory in a courtroom, I learned, is very different from victory on the street. The whispers began almost immediately. They were quiet, insidious, and they spread faster than any legal petition. I walked into the Orchid Diner to talk to Sal, and the atmosphere. Once my safe haven was cold. Mandy, the day shift waitress, saw me and immediately busied herself at the coffee station, her back to me. "Sal?" I started, walking to the kitchen. He met me at the door, wiping his hands on a dirty apron. His eyes were terrified. "Mara, you can't be here," he whispered, pushing me back toward the office. "What, Sal? We won. You're safe for 30 days. "Safe." He let out a choked, bitter laugh. "They're calling you Romano's mistress. That's the word. The Ocelots. They've been in, not the thugs, just one of them, in a suit." He sat at the counter, ordered coffee, and he asked Mandy how Mr. Romano's girl was doing. My blood went cold. "He was marking you." "He was marking you," Sal corrected, his voice cracking. and me, and my diner, and everyone who talks to you. We're grateful. Mara, I swear, but you're poison now. You've brought the war to my counter. The isolation was suffocating. I had saved them, and in doing so, I had made them pariahs. I found Fabio at the CPH office, standing before the large window, looking down at the city. "It's not working," I said, my voice flat. "Your way, the light. They're just using a different kind of darkness. They're isolating me. They're making Sal a target." He turned. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard. "It's a predictable response. They cannot use force, so they use fear. It's why this half measure cannot continue." He gestured to his desk. There was a file, an employment contract. "It's time to make it official," he said. "A permanent senior position at the Community Harbor Trust, full salary, full benefits, your own office. You will be protected. You will be off the street. No one will be able to touch Sal because you will no longer be a waitress." It was a perfect logical solution. It was a golden velvet line trap. "No?" He looked genuinely surprised. "Mara, this is the answer. It gives you legitimacy. It gives you safety." "It makes me yours," I said, my voice rising. "It makes the rumors true. It says I'm bought. It says I'm your property. Just like Agent Clark said, I told you I am not for sale. This is not a transaction. This is protection." "It's an insulation," I shot back. "You don't get it. You can't. You live up here, in the spire, in these offices. I live down there. My strength, the only thing I have, is that I am one of them. The second I sign that, the second I take your money, I'm one of you. I lose my voice. I need to stand on my own ground. If I don't, I'm just a pet." The silence that followed was heavy and cold. The warmth of the greenhouse felt 1,000 miles away. The next day, Ocelot twisted the knife. The Opal City Watch blog, the very people we had helped, ran the story. The headline was devastating. "Napkin Gate inside the deal between Romano and his Quay mistress." Below it was a photograph, grainy, dark. Taken through the diner window that first night, it was me, at the table. It was Fabio, but the image was doctored. My hand wasn't holding a napkin. It was holding a thick white envelope, passing it to him under the table. They had reversed it. They had turned my one moment of stupid, blind courage into a sordid payoff. I stared at the screen, my entire body shaking with a rage so profound it made me sick. They were turning me into a whore. They were erasing my truth. I fled the office. I took a cab back to the Aurora Spire, to the apartment I had barely used. I tore through my backpack, my hands clumsy with fury. I found it, the original napkin. The real one, folded into a small square, my clumsy drawing of an orchid. I stalked into the sleek, modern kitchen and twisted the knob on the gas stove. The blue flame clicked to life with a quiet hiss. I held the napkin over the fire. I was going to burn it, burn the proof, burn the moment that had started this whole nightmare. "Don't." Fabio was standing in the kitchen entrance. I hadn't heard him enter. "They're using it," I choked out, the words thick with tears of rage. "They're lying. They're turning it into something dirty." The edge of the paper began to curl and brown from the heat. "Let them," he said, his voice quiet, intense. He walked toward me slowly, his hand outstretched, palm up. "Let them lie. You know what that is." He gently took the napkin from my fingers, his thumb brushing the singed corner. "This," he said, holding it between us, "is not a payoff. This is the first time you said no to a man with power. This is the moment you chose to speak. Don't you dare let them burn that. Don't you burn it. Keep it. Remember exactly who you were when you wrote it." His defense of me, his belief in that moment only made the anger hotter, more complex. "Remember," I spat. "How can I? Your world is suffocating me. You said light, Fabio. You promised light, but this." I gestured at my phone on the counter. "This is dark. This is poison. This is your world, isn't it? You just hide the bodies better." "This is Ocelot's move. Mara, not mine." "But why?" I cried, finally letting the real question surface. "Why is he even here? You're Fabio Romano. You're the myth. You control this whole city. Why is a man like Victor Ocelot still breathing? Why is he powerful enough to do this? You could have stopped him. Years ago, you let him. You let this happen. The accusation hung in the sterile kitchen air, ugly and sharp. He didn't deny it. He turned his back to me, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at Port Aurelia. His reflection was a dark, commanding silhouette against the lights of the city. "Yes," he said. The word was hollow. I stopped breathing. "What?" "I let him live." He spoke to the glass, to the city. Years ago, before all this, Victor Ocelot was a street thug. Reckless, violent, he worked for my father. He caused trouble. He hurt an innocent family, badly. The order was given. He was meant to be erased. He paused, and I could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigidity of his spine. But Victor's father, he was a good man, an old school man. He saved my life. He took a bullet that was meant for me when I was too young and too stupid to see it coming. A debt of blood, my father. He would not move against the son of the man who saved his own. He turned to face me, and his eyes were not the eyes of the man from the greenhouse. They were black, haunted. My father exiled Victor, gave him the South Side, just to keep him out of sight. I honored that debt. I chose my father's honor over justice. I let a bad man live. He looked at me, the confession raw and open. That street thug built an empire on my honor. Every dirty deal, the HDA, the drugs he's pushing, the threat to Alex Petrov, this picture. It all grows from the poison I refuse to cut out. It's all my fault. The truth was worse than any lie. He wasn't clean. He wasn't just a protector. He was compromised. He was the architect of his own enemy. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I grabbed my bag from the counter. "Mara." He stepped toward me, his hand out. "No." I flinched away. I can't be here. I can't be in your tower. I need my own ground, the real one. I need to think. It's not safe. Not after this. I don't care. I walked out. I ignored his call. I told Alistair, who was waiting in the hall, that I was leaving. I told him not to follow me. I needed to be alone. I took a cab back to my tenement. My apartment was cold, the eviction notice still taped to the door. I sat on my lumpy mattress, the sounds of the city outside. No suits, no shadows, no Fabio. He was respecting my wish. He had let me go. The silence was absolute, a test of his control and my resolve. My phone buzzed. My heart leaped, thinking it was him, coming to apologize. It was an unknown number. It was a picture, a young woman, maybe 20, with Lucan Pride's sharp, intelligent eyes. She was bound to a metal chair in a dark, damp room, a gag in her mouth. The text that followed was simple. His sister, Eiderlight Fairy, Pier C. You, alone, tell Romano. She dies. My blood turned to ice. They knew. They knew I was alone. They knew about the fight. They were exploiting the gap between us. This was my fault. My anger had done this. I didn't call him. I didn't call Alistair. I just ran. The Eiderlight ferry terminal was abandoned, a rusted skeleton against the black water. The wind howled, whipping my hair into my eyes, tasting of salt and rust. "I'm here," I screamed into the darkness. "Let her go. I'm alone." A slow, mocking clap echoed from behind a stack of shipping containers. Victor Ocelot emerged. He wasn't a thug. He was immaculate in a camel hair coat, smiling like he was at a cocktail party. "Mara Devon," he said, his voice rich and amused. "The woman of the hour, the napkin that launched 1,000 ships. Bravo. Where is she? Where is Lucan's sister?" "Oh, her," he waved a dismissive, gloved hand. "Safe, I assume, in her dorm room at university. That was just an invitation. You're a difficult woman to get a meeting with. Mara, you're always surrounded by his men." It was a lie, a trick. The relief was so profound it made me weak, but the rage that followed was sharp as glass. I fumbled in my pocket. My fingers found the side of my phone. I hit the volume button, and then the power button. The shortcut. It was recording audio. "What do you want?" "I've been watching you," he said, stepping closer, his smile friendly, his eyes dead. "You're wasted on him. Fabio. He's a relic. He's weak. He's compromised by his own ridiculous code. He lets this whole waterfront rot, all because of some ghost." He gestured to the city. "I'm a builder. I have a real revitalization program. New homes, clean parks, safe streets. Lumen Apex isn't the enemy. Mara, it's the cure. But I need the people to trust it. I need a voice. Your voice." He was offering me the same deal. "You want me to switch sides? To be your mascot?" "I want you to be a pragmatist," he said. "Join me, publicly. Denounce Romano. Tell the world he used you. Tell the truth that his CPH is a sham. Stand with me, and we will actually save this neighborhood. You threaten children. You fake evidence. You're a monster." His smile tightened. "I'm a businessman. You want to build a new city. You have to clear the old foundations. Look around, Mara. Where is he?" He looked pointedly into the shadows, his hands spread wide. "Where are the 11 suits? Where is your protector? He let you walk right into my hands. He's not here." He was right. The silence was absolute. No sound of approaching cars, no glint of a sniper scope, no Alistair. It was just me, on a dark pier with the wind howling and the man Fabio had let live. My trust in Fabio was a hollow, aching void, and my phone was in my pocket, silently recording every single word. I walked away from Victor Ocelot, my legs steady, my hands buried deep in my pockets, my thumb pressed hard against the record button. The wind tried to steal my breath, but I didn't run. I walked. Every step a calculated display of calm. I didn't look back. I reached the street, flagged down a late-night cab, and gave the address for the Community Harbor Trust. I didn't know if Fabio had left me there alone. I didn't know if his honor was a chain or a lie. I didn't know if my trust was broken. But I knew one thing: I had Ocelot's entire confession in my pocket, and the fight wasn't over. The CPH office was dark, except for the glow of a single monitor. Vesper Knox, or at least her digital presence, was working. The synthesized voice came from the speaker as I entered, a soft, toneless hum. "You were gone for 58 minutes. Miss Devon, Mr. Romano is occupied. Did your meeting with Mr. Ocelot go as planned?" My blood froze. "We knew, Mr. Ocelot was tracking your phone. We knew he would exploit the disagreement. We provided a dark zone at the ferry terminal. No surveillance, no audio. It had to be your word against his. Your choice." "He didn't know I was recording," I said, pulling the phone out. I felt a surge of cold fury. Fabio had let me walk in, but Vesper had been watching the perimeter. It was a test. "A wise precaution," Vesper said. "I will take the audio, but I have something better." An image appeared on the main screen, a complex diagram of cryptocurrency transactions. "Lumen Apex is not just a shell company," Vesper's voice explained. "It is a multi-signature crypto wallet, a digital slush fund. It requires 2 out of 3 keys to move any money. Keyholder 1, Victor Ocelot. Keyholder 2, an offshore account in the Caymans. Keyholder 3." A name flashed on the screen: Evangeline Locke. Locke, I breathed. "She's not just taking bribes, she's a partner. She holds the keys to the kingdom." "She is the key," Vesper corrected. "Without her digital signature, Ocelot cannot access the funds from the HDA contracts. She is the firewall and the treasurer, all in one." The recording was good. This was better. This was the mechanism of the crime. I looked at the clock. 4 a.m. "There's a city council hearing," I said, my mind racing. "Tomorrow at 10 for the Transparent Budget Initiative. It's a public forum." "It is," Vesper confirmed. "Then we're going," I said. "We're not waiting for the injunction to run out. We're putting her on the stand publicly." I spent the next hour drafting a press release. I sent it to Jess at the Opal City Watch and every other news outlet in Port Aurelia. civilian advisor to demand answers from HDA chair at public hearing. I attached the audio file of Ocelot's confession. The city woke up to a firestorm. The next move came from the last place I expected, Agent Clark. He didn't call. He showed up in the CPH lobby, looking pale and furious, and demanded to see Romano, Luke and Fabio, and I met him in the glass conference room. "You have no idea what you've done, Margra," Clark hissed, throwing a copy of the Opal City Watch blog on the table. The headline screamed, "Ocelot confesses I'm a builder." "You just blew up a 3-year federal investigation," Clark said. "It looked to me," Lucan said, his voice mild, "like your investigation was a sham? Or were you aware your office was funding the very conspiracy you were pretending to investigate?" Clark's face went white. He knew about my questions. He knew we had the grant numbers. "Look," he said, dropping the bravado, his voice becoming a desperate whisper. "This is bigger than Locke. It's bigger than Ocelot. This money laundering, it goes way up. We want Ocelot. We want him to flip. We want him to map the entire network." "So arrest him," I said. "We just gave you his confession." "His confession is inadmissible," Clark snapped. "It's an illegal recording, but it gives us leverage." He turned to Fabio. He'll talk to you. He respects your old world." "Garbage. We want you to facilitate a deal. Get Ocelot to roll over on the network. In exchange—" He paused, taking a breath. "In exchange, the NCIC will close the active file on the Romano Consortium. Extortion, racketeering, it all goes away. We give you a pass. You give us Ocelot." It was the deal, the ultimate temptation, the chance for Fabio to get out from under the federal microscope for good. All he had to do was honor his father's debt one last time and trade his enemy. I looked at Fabio. His face was granite. This was the moment, his light versus his freedom. Fabio stood up. He walked to the window, looking down at the street. He didn't look at Clark. He looked at me. "No." Clark was stunned. "No, Romano. This is a one-time offer. This is your get-out-of-jail-free card." "I am not a broker for federal agents," Fabio said, his voice cold as the glass. "I do not trade people. I do not make deals in the dark." He turned, his dark eyes burning into Clark. "But this is what I will do. I will allow my chief counsel, Mr. Pride, to hand you a clean, legal, and admissible case against Evangeline Locke and Victor Ocelot. We will provide Vesper's data on the crypto wallet. We will provide the HDA map fraud. We will give you everything you need to arrest them publicly, legally, and in the light, and you will do it. Agent. Or we will give this entire file to the press and let them ask why the NCIC is protecting a cabal of criminals." He had made his choice. He had chosen me. He had chosen his new path. Clark, cornered and beaten, grabbed his briefcase. "You're insane. You're blowing it all. Romano, for her." He stormed out of the room. The hearing was set for 10 a.m. We had less than 12 hours. Ocelot's response came at 3 a.m. My phone rang, waking me from a fitful doze on the CPH office couch. It was Sal, my old boss. He was screaming, "Mara, the sky, it's on fire. The whole key is on fire." I ran to the window. It was right. A massive column of black smoke was pouring into the night sky from the direction of the docks. "Pier 9, I whispered. Vesper's voice crackled over the intercom. "Massive fire reported at Pier 9. East Warehouse. Arson is suspected." "He's burning the evidence," Lucan said, grabbing his coat. "The chemicals. The barrels we filmed." "Not just that," I said, a cold dread washing over me. "The office. The paper records, the original HDA fire reports we found, the shipping manifests. Lucan. We stored the hard copies in the fireproof safe in that office." "He's not just burning the chemicals," Lucan said, his face pale. "He's burning our case." "We're going," I said. We got there in Lucan's car, screeching to a halt a block away. The heat was a physical blow. The warehouse was an inferno. Flames leaping 200 feet into the air. Fire trucks were surrounding the blaze, but they were in containment mode. The building was lost. "We're too late," Lucan said, his shoulders slumping. "No," I said. "The office was in the back, concrete-lined, the safe. It's fireproof, not fire-destroyable. It'll survive the heat, but if that roof goes, it'll be buried under 100 tons of steel. We have to get it." "Mara, that's insane," Lucan said. "It's a firestorm." "He's right, Miss Devon, you are not going in there." I spun around. Alistair was there, with the full team of 11 suits emerging from the shadows, carrying fire-retardant blankets and breathing masks. And behind them, Fabio. He was wearing a dark, heavy coat, his face grim, his eyes locked on mine. The fury from our fight was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate urgency. He had followed me. He had never been far. "Ocelot's move was predictable," and he said, his voice tight. "The evidence must be secured." He handed me a mask. "Alistair, you and the team secure the perimeter. No one gets in, no one. Mara, you and I, we know where the office is." We ran. We wrapped the blankets over our heads and ran past the fire line, ignoring the shouts of the firefighters. The heat was like a physical wall, scorching my lungs. We found the office door, the metal warped and red hot. One of Fabio's men, a man built like a tank, used a pry bar. The door screeched open. The office was an oven, but not yet on fire. Smoke was so thick I couldn't see. "The safe!" I yelled, pointing to the corner. It was a large, black metal box. We grabbed it. It was scorching, even through our gloves. "It's too heavy," I choked. "We are not leaving it." Fabio set his shoulders, his muscles straining. That's when the world exploded. A sound like a freight train, a groan of tortured metal from above, the roof. "Mara." Fabio didn't push me. He threw his body into mine, tackling me, covering me with his own. He wrapped his arms around my head, pulling me tight against his chest, shielding me with the heavy wool coat in his own back as a ton of burning steel beams and corrugated metal crashed down around us. The noise was deafening. The world went black, filled with smoke and the smell of his coat and the terrifying, immediate heat. Then, silence. Except for the roar of the fire outside the small pocket we were in. "Fabio," I whispered, my face pressed against his shirt. His heart was hammering like a trapped bird. He groaned, a low, pained sound. "Are you hurt? Tell me, are you hurt?" "No," I managed. You covered me. Fabio, are you—" "I'm fine." He was lying. We pushed our way out from under a collapsed I-beam. Alistair and the team were there, pulling debris away, their faces masks of panic. They pulled us out into the air. Fabio staggered, leaning against the wall, his arm. The sleeve of his expensive coat was torn wide open. From shoulder to elbow, the fabric was soaked. Underneath, his skin was laid open, a deep, brutal tear from a piece of shrapnel. I didn't see blood. I just saw the raw, parted flesh. His eyes found mine, and in them, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not control, not power, not anger. Raw, unadulterated terror. Not for himself, for me. "Alistair!" he bit out, his voice shaking. "Get the safe. Get her out." We were in the back of a private ambulance, one that had appeared out of nowhere, clearly part of the Romano infrastructure. It was speeding away from the fire. A medic had just finished bandaging Fabio's arm, a thick, white dressing from his bicep to his wrist. Fabio was leaning his head back against the wall, his face pale, his eyes closed. I reached out, my hand trembling. I didn't touch his face. I didn't touch his chest. I gently took his good hand. His fingers, cold and clammy, reflexively gripped mine, a grip so tight it ached. I leaned over, and I pressed my lips to the white bandage on his arm. I just held them there, a silent, desperate kiss against the dressing. He didn't open his eyes, but I felt his breath shudder. We said nothing. We just held on, our breathing slowly sinking, the sound of the siren a distant wail, as he brought my hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. We arrived at the CPH bruised, covered in soot but alive, And we had the safe. Vesper's voice met us as we walked in. The audio of Mr. Ocelot's confession is a confirmed match. The press has it, but I found something else. It's the napkin. Vesper, not now, Lucan said, hauling the fire-blackened safe. No, Vesper insisted. The Napkin Gate photo. I was analyzing it for digital manipulation, and I cross-referenced the orchid drawing with Mr. Romano's blank business card. Fabio and I looked at each other. The stag on your card, Mr. Romano, Vesper said. It's an embossed watermark, a press mark. So is the orchid. I froze. What? I analyzed Locke's private ledger, Vesper said. The one from her home computer. In the metadata of the file, hidden, was a single, blind embossed image, a watermark. It's an orchid, identical to the one you drew. It's not a drawing. Mara, it's a symbol. It's a digital key. Vesper's screen lit up. Your napkin cipher. It's the key to the last partition, the locked drive. I'm in. A file directory appeared. There was only one document. Amber_doc_agreement, PDF. Lucan opened it. It wasn't a contract. It was minutes from a secret meeting 6 months ago. Attendees Evangeline Locke, Victor Ocelot, and a third man. A man I recognized from the NCIC office, not Agent Clark. His boss, a regional commissioner. The agreement was simple. Ocelot and Locke would use HDA and NCIC funds to buy the key. In exchange, Ocelot would deliver a cut of his chemical processing profits to the commissioner. This was it. This was the final nail. The document that tied the HDA, Ocelot, and the corrupt branch of the NCIC together in one neat, flammable package. Fabio, holding his bandaged arm, looked at me, and for the first time since the diner, I saw him smile, a real, dangerous smile. 10A, he said. The hearing. Let's go to church. The fire had been hours ago. We had turned the safe over to Lucan, who looked at the scorched metal like it was the Holy Grail. Vesper had downloaded the Amber Doc agreement and confirmed its authenticity. The hearing was set for the morning. The evidence was locked away, and the digital files were encrypted on servers Ocelot could never touch. The adrenaline had long since faded, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion and the sharp sting of antiseptic. The medic had cleaned and redressed Fabio's arm. He had insisted I be checked as well. I was fine, just bruised, my clothes stained with soot and singed at the cuffs. We found ourselves, not by plan but by gravity, back on the roof. The greenhouse was silent, a bubble of peace suspended over the nervous city. The rain had finally stopped, and Port Aurelia glittered below us, a cold, sharp beauty. The air was clean, washed new. We stood by the glass, not talking, for a long time. I was intensely aware of him, of the white bandage stark against his dark shirt, of the quiet strength he was using just to stand upright. I broke the silence. I stepped toward him, my hand lifting. I didn't touch his face. I didn't touch his chest. I gently laid my fingers on the crisp white bandage of his wounded arm. It was warm. He flinched. A tiny, involuntary tightening of muscle, but he didn't pull away. I looked from his arm to his eyes. They were dark, unguarded, and filled with the reflection of the city lights and the memory of the fire. I choose you, Fabio, I said, my voice quiet but fierce. The words were simple, the truth of them absolute. But I will not choose the darkness, the shadows you came from, the honor that let Ocelot fester. I can't. He didn't move, just watched me, his gaze so intense it felt like a physical touch. He covered my hand with his good one, his fingers lacing with mine over the bandage. I choose you, Mara, he replied, his voice rough, and I choose to live in the daylight again, the daylight you showed me. I leaned into him, and his uninjured arm came around me, pulling me close. He smelled of soap, antiseptic, and the faint, lingering trace of smoke. I pressed my face into his shoulder, and he kissed the top of my head. Then, his good hand lifted to my chin, tilting my face up. The kiss was nothing like the first one. That had been discovery. This was a promise. It was deep and slow and sure. It was the taste of survival, of a choice made. It was the quiet acknowledgement of the fire we had just walked through. The rain from the greenhouse roof dripped somewhere behind us. A soft, rhythmic patter, but all I could hear was the frantic, steady beat of my own heart. My fingers, no longer trembling, laced with his. His other hand, the bandaged one, came up, his arm stiff, and he rested it on my waist, pulling me fully against him. We stood in the center of the glass room, our foreheads pressed together, our bodies aligned, sharing breath. It was a kiss that sealed a treaty. We finally broke apart, but only by inches. He kept his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. "We need to sit down," I whispered, my voice shaky. His wound had to be paining him. He nodded, not speaking. We moved to the long, cushioned chaise lounge tucked in the corner. We didn't lie down, not at first. We sat side by side, his arm still around my shoulder, my head resting against his. "What happens after tomorrow?" I asked the glittering city. "If we win, what do we do with Raven's Key?" He was silent for a moment. I could feel the rumble in his chest before I heard the words. "My father built his empire by controlling the docks," he said, his voice low. I think I'll rebuild mine by giving them back." I looked up at him. "How?" "A vocational school," he said, the idea sounding new, even to him. "Right on Pier 9, where that warehouse burned. We teach coding. We teach marine engineering. We teach trades. Give the kids, Ocelot tries to recruit something better than a gun." "A free bookstore," I added, the idea bubbling up, sudden and clear, "in the old shipping office, and a community clinic, a real one, where Mrs. Petrov can take Alex without a 4-hour bus ride." He looked down at me, and his smile was soft, unburdened, a clinic and a bookstore. "And a diner," I said, "with the best apple pie in Port Aurelia." He laughed, a quiet, genuine sound that vibrated through me. "Yes, a diner." The silence settled again, comfortable, domestic. But the hearing still loomed, the final battle. I pulled back, just enough to see his face. The laughter was gone, replaced by the grim reality of the morning. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "He will be there. Victor Ocelot. He will be in that room. He will try to make you a monster. He will push you. He will try to drag you down into the dark with him." I took his face in my hands, my gaze unwavering. "If you choose violence, Fabio, if you let him win, if you choose your father's honor over the law, I leave." I could feel his jaw tighten under my palms. "I'm not joking," I said, my voice breaking just a little. "If you become him to beat him, you've lost me. I'm gone." He met my gaze. There was no hesitation, no anger at the ultimatum, just a profound, weary understanding. He nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin. "I choose the law," he said, "and the light, I promise you." The promise, so absolute, so final, broke the last wall inside me, the tension, the fear, the isolation. It all dissolved. This time, I was the one who leaned in. I kissed him, and the kiss was no longer about a promise. It was about the present. It was fire and relief, deep and hungry and desperate for the life we had almost lost. His good hand slid from my shoulder, his fingers tracing the line of my spine, a slow, possessive stroke that sent a shiver through my entire body. I felt cherished, adored. He pulled me closer, and I was half in his lap, my hands in his hair. His breath was warm against my neck, his lips brushing the skin just below my ear, and I arched into him, my body alive, thrumming with a need that had nothing to do with courtrooms or criminals. It was just him. The heat between us built, sharp and immediate. The air grew thick. I felt his muscles tense, his control warring with a raw, undeniable want. He pulled back. His eyes, dark and heavy with desire, locked on mine. His chest was heaving. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He was asking permission. With his eyes, with the strained grip of his hand. He was asking me if this was what I wanted. He was giving me the power, even now. I saw the respect in his gaze. It was more potent than any caress. I leaned forward, my hands tracing the line of his jaw. I nodded, a small, trembling, absolute yes. He took a sharp, unsteady breath. He brought his lips to mine, and he kissed me with a slow, deliberate warmth that was almost painful in its tenderness. He didn't take. He shared. He held me. His bandaged arm a testament to his protection. His good arm a symbol of his restraint. He held me as if I were made of glass. And in that moment, I had never felt stronger. We stopped. We just smiled, our foreheads resting together. It was a quiet laugh, a shared secret. Respect was more powerful than instinct. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the napkin. My napkin, it was dry, slightly crumpled, singed at one corner from when I had tried to burn it. He stood, pulling me with him. He walked to a large pot where a single, perfect white orchid was in bloom. He slid the napkin under the pot, a small, paper foundation. He took my hand, his unbandaged one. He placed it, palm down, on the napkin. He covered my hand with his. Our fingers interlaced, our hands clasped together over the symbol of our beginning, resting on the soil, a silent, binding vow. Outside, the clock on the old city hall tower began to chime. 1, 2, 3. It chimed 12 times, signaling the turn of the day, midnight. And as the last bell faded, a low, mournful sound echoed from the harbor, cutting through the quiet of the greenhouse. The whistle of a late-night train, heading out of the city, a sound of departure, a sound of finality. The hearing was only hours away. The city council's transparent budget hearing was standing room only. The air was thick, smelling of wet wool and anxiety. Every local news camera was crammed in the back, their red lights like a row of sniper dots. Sal was there, in the third row, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Mrs. Petrov was beside him. Evangeline Locke swept in at 10 a.m. on the dot. She was dressed in a severe, expensive red suit, her confidence absolute. She smiled at the cameras, a picture of untouchable civic authority. I saw her gaze find the NCIC commissioner in the back, and they shared a small, reassuring nod. They thought they were here to swat a fly. Lucan Pride, his suit rumpled but his eyes bright as a hawk's, sat at our table. Fabio was beside me, his bandaged arm resting on his lap. He was just a man in a dark suit. He looked at no one but me. "We call Evangeline Locke to speak on the HDA's supplemental budget request," the council chair said. Lucan stood. "Point of order. Madam Chair, before we discuss new budgets, we must discuss the old one. We have evidence of severe, criminal misappropriation of public funds by the HDA." Locke laughed into the microphone. "This is a stunt, a desperate, slanderous attack by the Romano Consortium, a known criminal element." Lucan just placed the amber doc agreement on the overhead projector. The scorched, water-stained document was clear. "This is a signed agreement," Lucan said, his voice calm, "between Miss Locke, Victor Ocelot, and NCIC Commissioner Brand." "That is a fabrication," Locke shouted, her face turning as red as her suit. "I have never seen that in my life." At that exact moment, the main screen above the council flickered. It wasn't the document anymore. It was Vesper's work. A complex animated diagram bloomed on the screen, a digital wallet, money flowing from the HDA to Lumen Apex, to Victor Ocelot, and to a fat final account labeled Brand, the digital slush fund. That is privileged information," Locke shrieked, standing now. "That is illegal." "Is it also a fabrication?" I asked. I stood up, my voice quiet, but the microphone carried it. I held up a single sheet of paper, my original, scorched at the corner's napkin. "You're right, Miss Locke," I said. "A document can be faked. A digital trail can be confusing. But symbols have meaning." I placed the napkin on the projector. This is a drawing I made, a silly doodle of an orchid. It's the napkin cipher, as the press calls it. Then I placed a second document next to it. The cover page of Locke's private ledger, the one Vesper had found, the one from the fireproof safe. And this, I said, my finger pointing, is your private accounting ledger, the one you used to track the money. And right here, in the bottom corner, is an embossed watermark, a press mark, a symbol you used to mark your most secret, most profitable, most illegal contracts. I slid the napkin over, placing my crude orchid next to her corporate one. They were identical. The room erupted. Locke was speechless, her mouth opening and closing. You little bitch, she hissed. Order, order, the chairwoman yelled. A commotion started at the back of the room. A figure in a camel hair coat was pushing his way forward, Victor Ocelot. This is a circus, he bellowed, his face a mask of purple rage. You can't listen to this. This is a mafia hit. She's his whore. He was rushing the podium. The news cameras swarmed him. Before the bailiffs could even react, there was a quiet, solid surge. The 11 suits, they had been scattered, seated among the audience. Now they stood in unison. They didn't touch Ocelot. They didn't draw weapons. They formed two perfect human walls, a safe corridor that isolated Ocelot from me, from the council, and channeled him directly toward the two stunned court bailiffs. He was contained, his path to us blocked by a wall of immovable, silent men, the bailiffs. Their path cleared, grabbed him. "Get your hands off me," Ocelot roared, struggling. At that exact moment, I saw the other movement, in the back, the NCIC commissioner. Brand, he wasn't watching Ocelot. He was slipping, low and fast, out the side technical door. I caught Fabio's eye. I didn't have to say a word. He saw Brand escaping. This was the moment, the final test. Ocelot was his enemy, but Brand was the head of the snake. His old self, the monster, would have pursued, would have sent Alistair, would have ensured justice in an alley. Fabio looked at the escaping commissioner. He looked at me, my hand shaking on the podium. He took my hand, he squeezed it, and he did not move. He stayed. He chose the light. "He's getting away," a reporter shouted. "No, he's not," Vesper's synthesized voice said, suddenly booming over the room's PA system. An ear-splitting alarm began to shriek, the fire alarm, red lights flashed, and with a heavy thud, every metal security door in the building slammed shut, including the one Brand had just used. The elevators went dark. Vesper had just locked down City Hall. The room was chaos. The council chair was banging her gavel. Ocelot was being dragged out. Locke was screaming at Lucan. And in the middle of it all, Fabio Romano stood perfectly still, his hand in mine. He had kept his promise. The judge signed the warrants an hour later. Evangeline Locke and Commissioner Brand were arrested for fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. The HDA was immediately suspended, its authority frozen, pending a full state receivership. Victor Ocelot, his confession on the recording I had made, combined with the warehouse fire, was enough. A separate federal task force, a real one. Not Clark's indicted him on massive environmental charges and extortion. We walked out of City Hall into the bright, clean sunlight. Sal was on the steps. He wasn't pale. He wasn't scared. He was weeping. Fat tears of relief rolling down his cheeks. He just grabbed me, pulling me into a hug, smelling of onions and flour. "You did it, Mara, you did it." The city council passed the emergency protective order for the residents and small businesses of Ravens Key. The evictions were dead. The CPH, now partnered with a dozen other real community groups, began the work of rebuilding. That night, I was back in the apartment at the Aurora Spire. I had showered, the soot and the grime of the last 2 days finally gone. Fabio was standing by the window. His arm was in a clean, black sling, but he was standing tall. He was holding a small, simple black frame. "I had Alistair pick this up," he said. He handed it to me. Inside the frame, pressed against black velvet, was the napkin. My napkin, the one I had written in the diner, the one I had tried to burn. "It's the original," I whispered, touching the glass. "Turn it over," he said. I flipped the frame. On the back, which had been blank, there was now a note written in his strong, precise, elegant script. "You read my note. Now you read my life. A new page." My eyes filled with tears. This was his answer. This was his surrender. He held out his good hand. "Come with me. One last time tonight." We were on the roof, in the greenhouse. The city was a sea of glittering diamonds below us. He turned on a small, hidden speaker, and a low, slow jazz melody was filling the warm, humid air. He stepped in front of me, his good arm going to my waist, his bandaged one resting lightly on my shoulder. "I don't know how to dance," I whispered, my hands going to his neck. "Neither do I," he confessed. We swayed. We just moved to the music, two people who didn't know the steps, finding a rhythm. He smelled like soap and cedar, and he was warm, and he was real. He leaned his forehead against mine, our feet shuffling on the stone path, the lights of Port Aurelia blurred behind my closed eyelids. "Miss Devon," he whispered, his voice a low, soft rumble against my skin. "From a single piece of paper, you rewrote an entire harbor." The city glittered, the air was clean, and for the first time in my life, I was finally, completely home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And if you want to see more stories like this reach a wider audience, please hit that hype button to show your support.